to publicly advocate for the problems of men and boys?
Because victimhood doesn't work for men the way it works for women. We don't feel sorry for men. And rightly so, by the way. Biologically, men are disposable in a way that women aren't, for the obvious reasons. If you have a tribe of 10 men, 10 women, you send the women off to war, you're screwed. You send the men off to war, one comes back, you can still replenish the population. So men are disposable, always will be, much more than women. And so we don't feel sorry for men in the same way. And I'm not advocating that we feel sorry for men, because I don't believe that's the solution to men's problems. The solution to men's problems is for men to be better.
What's that mean?
You know what I mean. Look at you. This is what your entire life is spent on, bettering yourself. Physically, emotionally, psychologically, mentally. You're obsessed with performance. You're obsessed with being better. You're obsessed with being happier, more fulfilled, all of these things. It's a pursuit of your own greatness. We've been guilt-tripped about our past. You don't have any responsibility for things that happened 400 years ago, and I don't think anyone should feel guilt because of the color of their skin. I think the reintroduction of racialized thinking into our societies is one of the worst things that we could do to ourselves. That's why I've been pushing back so strongly against it. I don't want my black friends to be treated differently because they're black, and I don't want my white friends to be treated differently because they're white. And the fact that we now live in a society where it's become acceptable to say, oh, you're a white man, or whatever, and that is somehow a dismissive thing, that implies with it that you have some sort of lower value in the hierarchy of who's allowed to express an opinion or whatever. I think it's outrageous. I think it's disgusting, and I think it needs to end. We've in about three seconds here. The idea is this: society is deeply unfair. The rich and powerful, the 1%, we could call them, the 1% control everything, the aristocracy, the czar. They have all the resources, and everybody else is essentially a slave. And what we need to do is we need to create what they call the dictatorship of the people. They created a bloody revolution. They killed the Tsar, the royal family, murdered them all, executed them all. And then they began to go after everybody else, everybody who had some kind of status or power in the pre-existing structure. For example, in my grandmother's case, they had a horse. That was enough for them to be considered wealthy. People came to the house with guns, kicked them out of the house, took all their property, and exiled them to Siberia. My grandmother, who was a little girl, remembers her little brother begging for food on the way, and they didn't have enough food, and he starved to death on the way. The Russian Revolution, who in any way challenges the radical progressive leftist narrative in any way is automatically right-wing, is automatically conservative at best. That's the nicest thing they'll say about you. I'm not conservative. I have conservative views on some things. I have very liberal views on many other things. I'm in the center politically, as I think of it. But it boggles my mind that we are now in a position, John, that freedom of speech, which is a fundamental cornerstone of Western civilization, has become a conservative value. Anyone who they told a group of women that they're going to put scarring on their faces or visual disfigurements of some kind, and then they would go into an interview, and the purpose of the experiment is to work out whether the interviewer is going to treat them differently because of their facial disfigurement. What they didn't tell the women is, as they were leaving to go for the interview, they touched up their makeup and, without showing them the facial disfigurement, removed the scarring. So they went into the interview thinking they're facially scarred, but they weren't. And they came back reporting massive levels of discrimination, specific comments that the interviewer had made about them that they perceived. So you see what you expect to see. This is why teaching people victimhood is so dangerous, because it makes them victims. So they didn't expect
game called Werewolf.
No.
Everyone gets a piece of paper. It's either got villager written on it, but two have the word werewolf. Someone runs the game to make sure no one's cheating, and they go, okay, it's nighttime, everyone close your eyes. Werewolves choose someone to kill, and the werewolves go. They say, okay, everyone close your eyes, it's morning time, open them again. During the night, Francis was killed. There's then a conversation, and this is where it gets interesting, between all the villagers and the two werewolves over who the werewolves are. Then at the end of the day, the villagers have to decide who they're going to kill, and they say, well, we're going to kill Konstantin. It's revealed by the person running the game, I'm afraid Konstantin was a villager. and the game continues. The villagers win the game if they kill both werewolves. The werewolves win the game if they kill all but 2 villagers. And the werewolves usually win. The game was invented by a student of sociology in Russia who wanted to prove his thesis that an uninformed majority will always lose a battle of information against an informed minority. So that just shows when you have hidden information, you can completely manipulate a large group of people.